Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. It really means a lot. Thank you very much for having me. Such a neat thing. These events are just amazing. And actually, I just want to, I want to talk about this AC Hub because this hub is responsible for my employment here. And what I mean by that is, my wife is sitting over there. We found out we were going to have a baby. This was a couple years ago. And I was in the midst of a PhD, and I was really kind of taking my time. My wife was she was the, I call her my sugar mama. She was working, and so I said, there's no rush. But then we found out we were going to have a baby, and now there's a rush. I gotta get a job. So I start saying I'm just going to finish it. I'm going to finish it, and we move a little bit further out west. And I'm driving by Algonquin College all the time, but I've never really been in here. And I say, I'll give it a shot. I'll go in there, see if I can work along some of these students. I'm a student. And I come in, and this is the first place I go, the AC Hub. And I'm here working away. And then one day they're saying, they come over and say, hey, we're giving out free pancakes over here. Would you like some? Well, sure, of course, free pancakes, absolutely. And I come then a couple of days later, free massages today. I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. What a place. And I started walking around the college, and I made it my mission. Then I said, I've got to work here. And I did everything I could. And I just, and then eventually they let me in, and then I never left. I brought in, I have 3 bookshelves. I'm like, you can't get rid of me. But anyways, so no, like I said, I really appreciate this, and I'm glad it's in this space. This space, again, it means a lot to me for that reason. So I'm going to talk about tattoos. I have some tattoos. How many of you have tattoos? Show of hands. Yeah, that's what you expect. So we're going to talk about the statistics, how many are likely to have them, but we're going to celebrate them as well. So it's this rich, culturally rich practice that humans have been doing since as long as we've been around. And I think it's time that we really appreciate that. And that was the purpose of this book, and that's what allowed me to be able to get the PhD done on studying tattoos. I think when I first proposed it, it's not always a really popular topic. In fact, my supervisor told me, he said, you're probably not going to get a job if you keep studying tattoos. But those pancakes proved him wrong. So, no, he's an amazing guy. But he was giving me practical advice. But yeah, so there's me. You now know that. So some history of tattooing. So it's the oldest anthropological records show 5,300 years ago. You have Otzi, this Iceman. They uncover him in the Swiss Alps, and he has 61 tattoos still intact. And what they've been able to do is show that, yes, once you thaw them out, you can see that 5,300 years ago, we were tattooing our bodies, which means it happened before then. Someone influenced Otzi. So you can keep looking, you can keep tracing back, and as far as we're going to go, we're going to find tattoos on skin. We're going to find people using their body for expression, which is what we always do as humans. We express ourselves through our bodies. Our fashion, our the way we dress our hair. Tattoos are part of that. The indigenous peoples of North America have been tattooing for at least 3,000 years. So it's really important to sort of get the gravity of how long it's been around, because in the Western context, this is the first recording of a tattoo. So in 1769, 10 years after plotting out Newfoundland, I'm a Newfie, so I always say that is important. Captain James Cook gets sent to the South Pacific South Pacific Ocean, and he's traveling around these islands, and he finds this practice of knocking ink into skin, and it's the tatau, which is the Tahitian word for to strike. So he records tatau, and they bring back some folks, and then the Europeans start getting tattooed, and that becomes the tattoo. The tattoo becomes part of popular language. So there's the Western history of 1769, but again, the history's been going on for much longer than that. But today, 40% of those 18 to 35 have a tattoo. A $1.65 billion industry. So when I first started studying these tattoos, again, it's been about a decade, the assumption is I'd study it from an angle of deviance. There's something wrong with those who get tattooed. Maybe they're a deficiency in the ego or something. And I always took real offense to that, because the very reason why I started studying it is because they meant a lot to me. I had a pet die at the time, and I got his name tattooed on my arm, and it meant a lot to me. And I thought, I bet it means a lot to a lot of other people, and it's often being just looked at as in the dark and the deviant. And I said, it's got to be more. There's got to be a different angle to it. So as a sociologist, my goal was to say, let's take it out of those shadows of deviance, and now let's look at tattoos as something that just is so much more than what it's been looked at in the past. So the book here, which I'll read a little section from in a bit, a lot of it's based upon my research here in Ottawa. So when I moved to Ottawa, it's when I began really doing the research for the PhD, and I went to a whole bunch of tattoo studios, and I would come in, and then I would leave because they scared me. I'm not going to, but I really needed to do ethnographic research, and eventually I found this place called Railbender Studio. They're in Hintonburg, 3 Hamilton Avenue North. Fantastic studio. I'm getting kickback. No, not yet. But a lot of my students are going. A lot of folks who work here are going. But it's a brilliant tattoo studio. But this is just some of the stuff they do. But the thing that I first realized there, and the thing that's really powerful, is we've come a long way since the flash tattoo. So our parents, our grandparents, my mother's right there actually. Hi, Mom. They're used to the biker. They're used to the different type of tattoo for a different type of person, right? And most of and even at a certain point, it was called pick and stick flash. So you'd go in and you'd find a binder and you'd say, y'all have this Tasmanian devil or something of that sort. So it was flash because it could be done in a flash, and it was flashy. It was on the walls. So that was tattooing, but around 1970, things started to change slowly. Ed Hardy, so you see Ed Hardy clothes. Believe it or not, he's one of the big pioneers in actual artistic tattooing. But we see a lot of different folks taking tattoos into some place it hasn't been before. And as a result, what we have today currently is custom tattoos. If you go to get a tattoo, you're going to pay some money, but you're going to get a custom artistic design by an artist. So that's really important. I just wanted to sort of mention that by saying, what I'm going to really try to get at today is, why do we tattoo, though? Why do we do it? And during the Q&A, hopefully we can hear from some folks here who have them. Why did you do it? I'm not, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but why do we tattoo? Well, in researching for this book, what I found is, and this is just a good sentence that summarizes that tattoo enthusiasts map out their lives. They intentionally become permanent anchors of meaning and identity. So tattoos is this deeply human practice where we express ourselves through the body, through art, and through symbolism. And like I said, we've been doing it for as long as we've been around. And the reason is we've always been interested in mapping out our lives and creating anchors for who we are. So that's the broad stroke. And I'm going to give you a very specific example in a bit. But because I teach here, I think it's important to teach a concept in case we're not all on the same page. So I actually teach this in my sociology class, and some folks are very kind who come from that class. The self. The self's a really important concept for all of us to think about. And what I normally do in my classes is I have them Google etymology of the word person. So etymology is the study of the history of words. And if we look at the etymology of the word person itself, it means actor's mask. So in the original Latin, we're all just actors. All of us are just literally performing roles all the time. Nothing is real. There's no, this is the real me. This is Chris Martin right in front of you. Later, I won't act like this. Right? We all know that. If we think about it right in our hearts of hearts, we say, I am this and I am that, but those things aren't me. They're just the strung together narrative of my life, So the self is the concept that we have of who we are and what makes us unique. But the really important thing to realize is the self is not complete. It's never complete. It's a dynamic process that we constantly add to or redo as we go on. So if we could think about the self then, how do tattoos fit within the self? Well, this guy, I love him. He's my favorite sociologist. I can't resist it. Just a little bit. So Zygmunt Bauman, he writes these theories about the self in the contemporary world, the world we're living in right now, and he calls it liquid modernity. And what he says is, this is a time more than ever when it's really difficult for people to figure out who they are. Things are really constantly changing. So for young people, career spans are going to be different. In the past, we could hang our hat on the titles that we were given. But for young people today, they're going to have to roll with the punches. They're going to have many titles in their life. And it's the same even for all of us. So what Zygmunt Bauman says is, in this liquid modern world, it's very difficult for us to figure out how to maintain a stable version of self, how to really be confident in who we are all the time. And so if you think about all of these things then, my whole point in understanding tattoos is to say, look, given that we are living in this liquid modern times, why are more and more people getting permanently tattooed? Because Zygmunt Bauman's thing is everything's very impermanent, like your mobile phone. And when a new phone comes out, have you ever been really depressed with your current phone? You're like, this thing is, it's shame now. It's like people are like, oh, you got the iPhone 8? This is like 10 now. So with technology, with fashion, everything's moving so quickly, yet more and more people are getting these marks indelibly etched into their skin that can't go away. And there's something there there's a paradox there. And that became the crux of my thesis, and that became the crux of me trying to understand why people get tattooed. And then if we go back, again, why do we get tattooed? People are intentionally getting something that's permanent because it anchors something. So we're starting to see whoa, what's going on? And so we look at it, really what's going on is someone like this person here I'm going to talk about. She's actually an alumni of Algonquin. She forms a really, really great example for what's going on here. So this is someone who gets skates tattooed on her arm. And actually, I first meet her because she's in the photography program here at the college, and she came into the tattoo studio to take pictures of us for her project. And I ended up, I said, can I interview you about your tattoos? And I just love her story. I love everybody's story. They were all very kind to sharing them with me. So I'm just going to read an excerpt, and I think it'll help explain what we've been talking about here. So if we go to page 130, there you go. She says, so the story behind the tattoo of the skates is that my dad died on me 2 years ago. And because everyone else around me had already passed, my aunts, uncles, and grandparents, I really wanted to get something to remember him by. My dad is my hero and my saving grace, and so I thought to myself, I'd like to get something to represent him properly. When I was little, I really wanted to play hockey, but I lived in Barrie, and there was no hockey for girls. So I would go and I would watch my brother play with my dad. But my dad and we'd play road hockey together, and eventually he volunteered to be a girls' hockey coach, so finally we could play. So to honor him, I thought I'd go and get the skates because, my dad, he was also a police officer, and I wanted to get his badge number on those skates. And she goes on to talk about it, and I always, I tell this story too when some folks will ask me about tattoo meanings and so on. I worked in a tattoo studio for a year, reception. I did tattoo myself, there's a picture of it, but it's not a good tattoo. But the thing is I got really used to people getting tattoos, but when she told me this story, this is one of those moments that it really cut through me again, how important these are to some people. So for her, that tattoo of skates, and if you saw it, if you were a passerby and you saw it, you'd say it's whatever. But for her, that represents inequality in sport. That represents, the history of how we think about women in Canada, even today. If you think about the NHL, you think about young girls who want to play sports and what they're going to be looking at in terms of fanfare, in terms of media attention, in terms of all kinds of elements of gender mixed into that. We see that, but we also see, probably perhaps more importantly for her, the memorialization of her father. We see that really, really deeply impactful thing on herself. So again, our self, that weave together fabric of who we are and what makes our story unique. For her, her father made her life unique. And by getting this tattoo and by really trying to anchor down that part of who she is, she's able to then express it to everybody and have that sense of satisfaction in knowing that she can now hold on to something forever. So the permanence is extremely important. And there's no superficiality in this, is the other really important part. Again, not everybody gets a tattoo for this reason. The reasons are going to be specific to every person, and that's what made this book interesting. I didn't have to make up any fun stories. People already had their own stories made up. But in being able to capture them, what we see is the reasons why people do what they do, though they're varied, they kind of play down to these core needs of who we are as human beings. There's certain needs that we have. And yeah, again, tattoos look like a want. Oh, it's just I want something fun, I want something. Yeah, sure, of course. But there's a deeper need that goes on there when you can finally use your body to express yourself. So what I often tell people is it's a literal heart on your sleeve, you know? It is genuinely putting yourself out there for others to be able to see you now and for you to be able to put that part of yourself out there forever. And so, this just kind of explains the tattoo. But again, in one tattoo, there's sorrow, love, art, sport, culture. So my job will never be in this and what I do is never to tell people what their tattoos mean, but to say that they're much more dynamic than you would think. One other story is when I first started teaching here, I went to the part-time training and I was extremely excited. You know, it led from pancakes and massages to now being in the part-time training. And I showed up and it was summertime, so I had a t-shirt on, you know, and I have the tattoo sleeves, and I thought, geez, I'll be the only one here that looks like a I don't know, a miscreant or something. And I show up, and this gentleman has like neck tattoos and everything. I'm like, man, he stole my bit. But so it's, you know, it's the smoke break time. I don't smoke, but I just like fresh air and hanging out around with the cool people. No, just kidding. Anyway, and I'm out there, and I've got my arms folded, and as I do in the picture for the event. And let's see. So I've got a spider web tattoo on my arm, and so and he comes up to me and goes, "So how long was your bid, man?" And I was like, "Bid? I'm not sure what you mean, young man." And he says, "Well, you got a spider web. You must have spent some time in jail." I said, "Well, I'm of the nerdy variety. I'm not the cool spider web guy. I'm the nerd spider web guy." I said, "No, I got it from so I explained it to him, and again, it just became a really important moment when there's not one meaning for every one of these things. The meaning is sometimes what you really rarely expect, but it is extremely still important for people. And in this case, Alex Neyron, who owned Railbender Studio, he was the owner. He died last year at the age of 40 of colon cancer, and he was my best friend, and he was the big part. The book's devoted to him. But when he was tattooing me, so I would be there in the tattoo studio. He's the first one that gave me the chance. Said, "Come on in," And I was there one day, and he was just kind of filling up the color on something else. Like this one says "Mom." It's the only one my mom likes. And he's doing something else, and he says, "Hey man, I want to do a spider web tattoo. Do you want to get one?" I said, "There's no way I'm cool enough to get a spider web tattoo, Alex." And he says, "Come on." So I called the wife and asked for permission, and then once permission's there, I got the spider web tattoo. So when I think of that spider web tattoo, again, it's memorialization. It is a history. I look at the history of tattooing coming from, in the West anyways, East Los Angeles, mid-20th century, Freddie Negretti, at Good Time Charlie's. He's genuinely taking prison tattoos and making them for everybody. That's genuinely where the black and gray scale tattoos come from, portraiture. They came from single needle prison tattoos, and they came for everybody. And in this one tattoo, I see that history, but I also see my best friend. I see a lot in one tattoo. And again, I think a lot of people would see that and say, "What an ugly spider web in that guy's arm." And I don't know if people would really appreciate that. And again, we've got to celebrate it. We really genuinely have to celebrate the beauty that is expression, that makes people unique. What makes all of us unique, again, is that self. Expressing yourself was the fun pun name for my presentation. And I think the ability to be able to express yourself is just priceless. It's what makes art so interesting. It's what makes music so interesting. And it's what makes tattoos continue to thrive, because we just have such a hunger for that level of expression. So yeah, thank you.